I don't know why he's talking about the NHS when it's called Mark Dolan uncancels Roy Chubby Brown and Winston Churchill. The Tories are never going to outright say they're against the NHS because they know a huge amount of the population rely on the NHS, and they do hold the NHS as this is a great institution. We are proud of this as a country.
The people in the NHS are great, but the organisation is now a massive white elephant.
There you go.
And once the boast of the world is now a national liability, which
there
could literally bankrupt the nation.
There you go.
It's time to scrap the diversity officers on 75 grand a year for an organisation that is famously and uniquely diverse. It's time to scrap the...
Blatant propaganda, see through. Honestly, if you can't see what he's doing, you're a fucking idiot. Sorry. Now, please, are you going to talk about Roy Chubby Brown and Winston Churchill?
Now, I'm no fan of Roy Chubby Brown. I've never really understood the whole hat and goggles thing. And much of his material, often nasty and pretty offensive, is not for me. But he's clearly a very talented guy with a huge following. He's got loads of fans. Bad luck, therefore, that one of the venues hosting his tour, Sheffield City Hall, cancelled his show and refunded tickets. Now this...
I got a line! Cancelled! I love... we need to play GB News Bingo at some point. We can get Walk on there, cancelled, cancel culture. Be class.
It's an appalling decision. It's an attack not just on free speech.
Sorry, did I miss something there? Did he go from trashing Roy Chubby Brown and saying how shit he was, and how much he wasn't a fan to it, saying this is a really terrible decision that a venue started to cancel gig of his? Is that what he just did? Wow.
But on the art form of stand-up comedy, something that historically we've been incredibly good at in this country. And stand-up comedy is supposed to be a broad church. You have one-liner comedians, clean comedians, dirty comedians, political
shit host of comedy shows, that kind of thing.
Comedians, silly comics, Andrew comics, happy comics. It takes all sorts. The hilarious storytelling ramblings of Billy Connolly and the punchy one-liners of Bob Monkhouse. As with all aspects of cancel
He knows no modern comedians.
culture, this decision is riddled with inconsistencies and hypocrisy. Seemingly, Roy Chubby Brown is a bit too naughty for the good people of Sheffield.
So I was prepared to talk about cancel culture. I didn't realise it was going to be a video mainly about the NHS, to be honest, but I was prepared to talk about cancel culture. So he said hypocrisy there. I'd like to know what hypocrisy he's talking about, because he hasn't specified that.
But will they be cancelling the shows of Jimmy Carr and Frankie Boyle? Now, full disclosure, those two comedians are among my favourites. Fantastic gag writers, incredible performers. I'm a fan.
I'm not getting this.
They have, respectively, told jokes about sexual assault and children with Down syndrome. So if Roy Chubby Brown is triggering and offensive or even dangerous, do you not think that gags about kids with Down syndrome having bad haircuts are problematic? Do you not think that jokes about gang rape are a tad problematic too?
He's defeated his own argument there. Think about what he's just said. He said Roy Chubby Brown's been cancelled because he's too offensive. And then gone, well, Jimmy Carr's been cancelled and he's made jokes about this. Oh, well, it can't be because he's too offensive then that he's being cancelled. I don't get it. Now, they always do this with cancel culture. They're very selective of what they mean by being cancelled. So, I'm not aware of anyone who is actually being cancelled for an unjust reason, and I'm willing to hear anyone's argument against that. Like, who can we think of that's being cancelled and has like actually had their career ruined because of cancel culture for an unjust reason? Like, if you want to argue against that, give me a name. Give me a name of someone who's been cancelled and tell me the exact reason they're being cancelled. So, what did they say? And then what I want you to do is defend what they said and say why they shouldn't have had any repercussions. That's what I want you to do. So go ahead. Put it in the comments. So if Roy Chubby Brown's been cancelled because he's a blue comic and primarily only has audiences who are probably very old at this point, to be honest. Now, I actually did watch Roy Chubby Brown as a kid. I'm not kidding. We had Roy Chubby Brown VHSs in my house, and I won't say I was allowed to watch them, but nothing happened to me if I did watch them and I was found watching them. Put it that way. So I wasn't encouraged to watch them, but I definitely did, and everyone in my family knew I was watching them. And I did repeat them, those jokes, at some point. And I found them hilarious as a kid. Because swear words and dirty words, hilarious. But if he's getting cancelled and Jimmy Carr isn't, it must be for a different reason. And is a conservative who, I presume most conservatives are like pro-free speech. That tends to be the thing, isn't it? And like sort of pro-right of the business to make their own decisions and without interference from other people and free market stuff. Does a venue not have the right to choose who it puts on stage? If they are choosing to remove Roy Chubby Brown from their lineup, then isn't that their right? And in that case, is Winston Churchill, is Roy Chubby Brown actually cancelled? Can he not just go elsewhere? There's tons of venues in Sheffield. Why can't he go to a different venue? Now, if he's got a contract, of course, with this venue, they've cancelled that contract, or they guaranteed him a venue, and then they pulled it out last minute. I think that's a bit wrong. I'm not really in favour of that myself. I'd rather they let him do this last one and go, all right, that's the last one, I'm afraid. We're no longer booking you in the future. That would be a better way of doing it. But at the same time, if they're a council venue and it's been overwhelmingly decided that the taxpayers who are paying for that council venue would rather not be associated with Roy Chubby Brown, then what do? You have to do that, right? There's nothing really you can do about that. If it turns out that he actually wasn't selling many tickets, so the venue have taken this opportunity to go, well, you're not selling, this is a sign for us that we probably shouldn't be featuring you anymore because the venue's too big, whatever, then that's fine. That is fine. Like, I don't know what your solution to that would be. He's not got the right to insist on a platform. You can't force a venue to let you have a show there. I'm sure if I contacted Sheffield City Hall now and asked for a venue for an upcoming talk tour, they don't have to go, yeah, sure. Their prerogative.
In the end, the audience should decide what is acceptable, not the modern-day censors who would happily kill all art.
That's stupid. So, in this example, the audience have decided, right? Surely. Like, if he hasn't sold, that's the audience deciding. If people have actually contacted the venue and saying, you're featuring Roy Chubby Brown, and he's a problematic performer, then that's once again the audience deciding. So, what's your point? Is your point that somehow Sheffield have acted independently from everyone else in reality and have just decided that they don't like Roy Brown anymore? Is that what you're saying? It's silly. It's a silly thing.
Unless they're breaking the law, all comedians should be free to perform their work and should be allowed to actually let the audience make a judgment. And market forces should decide.
They have.
There's space for Roy, Jimmy and Frankie too.
Market forces literally have decided this.
Attack, and there are comedians out there now afraid to tell a joke
No,
for
there
fear
isn't.
of their career.
No, bollocks. There's an article on this. Ricky Gervais, who people have tried to cancel so many times in theory, even came out and said, no, that's bollocks. Because it is. Once again, cancel culture, as the Conservatives like to call it, is a complete fabrication. Jimmy Carr, since we've used that example, Jimmy Carr went on a tax dodge and literally was on TV the next week. and he was making jokes about it. People were making jokes against him, actually, on the same shows as him, mocking this. People still make jokes about it. He has continued to have a career and do very well by himself. So the criticism there, that today would be called cancel culture, because people are trying to cancel him, he survived that. Why can he survive it, yet certain people can't survive it? Well, I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because they actually aren't that good. Maybe because their career was in the shitter anyway, because they had very few fans left. And then when they said something that's very problematic, for various reasons, maybe they didn't have the clout in the industry or the following to actually bounce back from that. Ricky Gervais has been called everything under the sun, from transphobic to homophobic to racist, all this stuff. He constantly gets this, and yet he still makes a fucking ton of money, and he continues to have shows on Netflix. He continues to have stand-up tours and all this shit. How many times did they try to cancel him when he was hosting the Golden Globes several years in a row? Why was he able to survive criticism, yet certain people, like a Lawrence Fox, for example, have no chin and just can't survive one bout of it? It's weird that it seems to just be conservatives that suffer from this. Really strange, isn't it? It's really strange. Yet cancel culture seems to be this big boogeyman for... I don't get it.
And for fear of the consequences. And that's not a very funny place to be. If you cancel Roy Chubby Brown and other people that don't fit the prescribed woke narrative, whilst allowing other comics to be as offensive as you like, you're not cancelling just one comedian, you're cancelling comedy altogether.
It literally doesn't follow. Like, how can they cancel one comedian for being too offensive while other comics get to be offensive if they like? That first one wasn't cancelled then. Because it clearly wasn't the offensiveness that was the problem.
And the result will be a joyless dystopia in which we're not allowed to mock or lampoon anything. Comedy is the ultimate weather vane of a free society. And if you lose a...
So conservatives aren't funny for this reason. How we frame that, we should be able to mock anything. And I agree to an extent, but here's the difference between conservative comedians and every other type of comedian. I don't believe there's actually a decent leftist comedian out there, really, anymore. Like, people might say, like, Jimmy Carr's left-wing. He's not, is he? He's not. He went on a tax dodge. He's not left-wing. But he's fine. He's fine. Right-wing comedians are not. And you know why? Because right-wing comedians punch down. That's their humour. Their humour is to take a type of person or a thing that's beneath them and to attack them, to kick them while they're down. And that's never funny. Or at least it's rarely ever funny. The joke is very one note. It's look how shit their lives are, basically. Whether you're attacking immigrants or gay, trans, races, people, women, people who are already beneath male comedians in the grand scheme of things in society. There's only so much humour you can get out of that, which is just so happens to be most of what Roy Chubby Brown jokes about, that and sex. But if you attack people that are above you, you punch up. There's more humour there, because there's not, and those people above you aren't in danger of being affected by it. Not really. So when you make jokes about the government, they'll continue to be the government. If you make jokes about billionaires, they'll continue to be billionaires. Probably won't even see what those jokes are or see any repercussions for it. If you attack the poor people, all that does is make people watching dislike poor people. And this is why things like Jeremy Kyle got cancelled, and why we don't really see Benefit Street advertised much anymore, because those shows were all about punching down. Look how shit these people's lives are. This makes me feel good about my life, because my life isn't as shit as theirs.
A plurality of comedic voices, the implications for our society are profound. And that is no laughing matter. Meanwhile,
I like the before he changes topics. I like that. I think GB News meant to cut this up into segments, but decided to leave it as one. And there's a reason they didn't label the first one about the NHS. They know cancel culture is a triggering phenomenon for their viewers. So what they want to do is to have people go, it's shocking, this cancel culture. What's this? A video about how Roy Chubby Brown and Winston Churchill are being cancelled. I'm going to watch that. Find out what these woke people are cancelling now. And then there's like a 5-minute rant about the NHS being shit. And according to Mark Dolan, this video is purpose built to attack the NHS and to make sure as many people as possible hear that argument.
Another week, another attack on Winston Churchill, this time from within, as the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust renamed itself the Churchill Fellowship and removed images of the ex-PM from its website. And
is that a problem?
They took his name, they removed his face. Now,
oh no, he's still called the Churchill. It's still called Churchill. It's got Churchill in the name. They haven't took his name off. What are you talking about?
We're told the Churchill family are happy with this, and that the decision is not an attempt to erase the memory of this wartime leader.
So there you go then, nothing to complain about.
His Christian name from the charity's title and taking his face off their website surely does exactly that.
Does it?
Consciously or unconsciously, it's an apology for a man who, during the Second World War, faced off
Here we go.
rescued the free world.
Oh.
His full name should be all over that branding, and so should his image. Churchill was a complex man, and you cannot evaluate the legacy of any politician from 100 years ago without placing them in the...
This is how we know the Conservatives are losing this debate. When that Scottish guy, I forget his name, sorry, you were great. When that Scottish MP appeared on Piers Morgan's show, Good Morning Britain, whatever, and absolutely lambasted Piers Morgan about how shit Churchill actually was, and we never talked about how shit he was. Piers Morgan had a panic, and he was just sitting there going, but he won the war. He won the war though. He won the war. We can't diss him. He won the war. He's our magic granddad. That's Piers Morgan right there. That's a perfect impression of Piers Morgan. When that happened, like, no one had any counterpoint. It was just, no, we cannot speak anything but positive things about Churchill. We absolutely cannot. And gradually since then, anytime Churchill gets brought up, it's, well, he was a complex man. Oh, he wasn't perfect. Oh, right, he wasn't perfect. He had some bad things, but he did mainly good stuff. And just, we've gone from, we can't say anything negative about him, so, all right, we have to kind of acknowledge the bad stuff now, but we have to try and make sure that he's still universally loved. And it's just not going to happen. People are too wise to it now, and people have a higher standard for their leaders now. It's just, well, I say that. Some people have higher standards. Other people will vote for Trump, the Conservative Party. Here we are.
Context of their time. But that's what campaigners now want to do. It's important for historians and indeed school teachers to look at the grey area of Churchill's time in power, both as a military leader, Home Secretary and ultimately Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
He said wrong things.
Yeah, absolutely.
He did wrong things.
Yeah.
He made profound mistakes, much of which are owing to the period of history in which he lived.
No, absolutely not. This is a shit argument. If you go, well, it was just a period of time he lived, that is an implication that everyone was like that. No, people criticised Churchill at the time. So no, this is not true. Genocide was not just an accepted part of life when Churchill was Prime Minister. Absolutely fucking not. and to claim otherwise is absolutely psychotic, to be honest. He just did a little bit of genocide. Oh, anyone would have done genocide in that position. Oh, well, that's fine then, right? Oh, fuck off.
But defeating Hitler, one of the worst monsters of human history, must surely define his legacy.
And it will. No matter what anyone says, Churchill is remembered first and foremost for his wartime leadership in Britain. It's hyperbolic to say beat Hitler because, I mean, that's just dumb. He wouldn't have done it by himself. Britain overinflates its importance all the time when it comes to World War II. And World War I, actually. The reality is we weren't the only one fighting that, and we weren't the biggest forces either. Russia had more to do with World War II victory. America, arguably, had more to do with victory. You can obviously say, oh, they came in late at the end, whatever, but their men, their money, their weapons, blah, 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 they all were huge, huge final power-ups to allow the Allies to win. And not to mention that Britain also had a massive empire at the time, so we were bringing in all these other countries as well. Australia, Canada are two nations that we often credit with it. But what about all the overseas territories as well? What about India, for example? There's a ton of countries who use World War II, basically, the aftermath of World War II, to basically say we want independence now. We couldn't have won the war without them. So to oversimplify this and say, well, Churchill won the war, it's stupid. It's the anti-history way of looking at it. It's an oversimplification. It's like the year one textbook history lesson. Britain won the war. All right. When you get to like 12, by that point, you should be aware that actually it's more complex than that.
If we're weighing up his contribution to humanity, I'll take that. The Third Reich gathered millions of Jewish people and murdered them in gas chambers. They were tortured, experimented upon, and enslaved.
Yeah, I mean,
Gold was prized from their mouths, as well as myriad other horrors that I just can't bring myself
literally
to
no
tell you
one
about,
has ever told you
doubtless
Churchill
know
was worse than
anyway.
Hitler. No one's ever told you that.
Defeating the evil of Nazism is surely the greatest triumph of any British leader in history. In my book, Churchill is a hero. The freedom we enjoy today, ironically to debate his legacy, is one for which we have him to thank. After
Fuck
another
off, that's
bizarre
true
week
at all.
in which we have debated the reputation of a man whose leadership, vision, creativity, hard work and courage saw the
Why are you scared of debate, though? Why are Conservatives do this all the time? Even when you're acknowledging that he did some bad things, you then say, well, none of that matters. He has to be labelled a hero. The whole point of a debate is people make their own decisions at the end, surely. We weigh up the good and the bad, and we say, well, this is what Churchill means to me. I would say, if you want to weigh up the genocide as a bad thing, and all the other bad things Churchill did, against his leadership during World War II, and come to the conclusion, well, he's still overall a hero for me. I mean, that's fine. That's your right. And no one's going to say... People might argue against that, might argue against your summary of that, but no one's going to say you can't hold that belief. Why are you against people's rights to do that? I thought you were pro-free speech.
defeat of fascism. I'm delighted to use this programme and this platform of GB News to officially uncancel Winston Churchill.
Never was cancelled.
And in tribute to this flawed, complex, sometimes wrong, but
Churchill, by the way, still in history curriculum at Key Stage 3 level, at the minimum. I know that for a fact. He hasn't been cancelled. Still very much there. So I don't know where this whole idea of him being cancelled comes from. It's stupid. All he means is cancelled equals people are talking about.
But ultimately, truly Great Britain. We are dedicating this show to him. He's all over the show tonight, folks. His face and his full name and his legacy. So,
Who gives a fuck?
To Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, the man who saved Britain, who saved the West, and who saved the world.
Hyperbolic, nonsense, I won't go into it.
We celebrate you, and we salute you.
Right. So this video has going to end up being about 50 minutes now. That's way too long. I'm going to have to split it into two. But fucking hell, what drivel that was. Cancel culture itself is made up. It's fully made up at this point. What they want to say cancel culture is has no bearing on reality. He's even said as much in this video where he said, "Roy Chubby Brown's been cancelled. He's been cancelled because he's too offensive for you woke people." But why haven't Jimmy Carr? Why hasn't Jimmy Carr been cancelled for being offensive? Well, then, okay, then you've defeated your own argument. He hasn't been cancelled because woke people find him offensive at all. Then clearly, just doesn't follow. Winston Churchill also never actually been cancelled. People are just debating the grey area, which he even said, "Oh, we have to sort of acknowledge the grey area now." But he's still a hero to me. Well, cool. He's not a fucking hero to me. I've decided that I can't forgive genocide as easy as you. So while I acknowledge that he was a great wartime leader, and probably the leader we needed in World War II, I actually have the soundness of mind to go, but he did negative things and that affects how I view him today. I can actually say that because I'm intellectually honest enough to do that. And I'm not super patriotic where the villains that are on my side are not actually villains, they're the heroes. I don't buy that bollocks. And I think most people don't either, to be honest, when it comes down to it. Churchill, I think, is still people's blind spot. But, more importantly, this video is an example of how conservatives have NHS propaganda, anti-NHS propaganda, where they want desperately NHS to be cut and privatised for the benefit of their billionaire mates. They want to make money off the back of it and they want poor people to suffer. They want the general population to suffer because they don't give a fuck about you, by the way. They look at America with envy. If only we could make money hands over fist over people being bankrupt over medical bills. If only we could do that. That's what they want. They know they can't get away with just saying that, though. That's why at the beginning of this video, they had the majority of it. They had 5 minutes dedicated to just how shit they want to say the NHS is, and they didn't label that in the video because they knew you'd watch Mark Dolan uncancels Roy Chubby Brown. Churchill, they knew you wouldn't watch Mark Dolan tries to actually cancel the NHS. It's a fucking hack move.